Hi, this is Bobby Kimbrough, and welcome to Off the Cuffs. I'm very excited today with me. I have a friend of mine, not only a friend, but a what I consider a good man, the Attorney General of North Carolina, Mr. Josh Stein. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here in Forsyth County. I want to thank you, sir.
Sheriff Kimbrough, it is always my pleasure. You ask, I'll say yes.
Oh, stop. You're so kind. Listen, a lot of people know who Josh Stein is. Some people don't. A lot of people have no idea what the Attorney General is. So will you just give me a few minutes of your time? Tell the people, who is Josh Stein? What does the Attorney General do? Is that somebody that just sits down in Raleigh and watches us like Big Brother? What is the Attorney General?
Sure. First, a little bit about me as a person.
Yeah.
Grew up in Chapel Hill, but spent my first few years in Charlotte. And that was because I wasn't born here. I was born in D.C.
Mm-hmm.
But right after I was born, this was mid-'60s, my parents moved us to Charlotte so that my father could join with Julius Chambers and James Ferguson to form North Carolina's first integrated law firm. And that was the law firm that won important civil rights victories in school desegregation, employment non-discrimination, voting rights, and integration.
So that's a true story. Somebody told me that. I thought, yeah okay.
Chambers, Stein, Ferguson was the name of that law firm.
That's true.
And it's so funny because I was with somebody in Charlotte and I was telling them that. And they're like, is that right? I said, yeah, Chambers, Stein, Ferguson. They're like, oh, yeah, Stein, that's you. It's my dad. And
wow.
My dad, he's wonderful. He's in great health, lives still in Chapel Hill. But Chambers, Fergie, and my dad are my heroes. And they inspired me in my career path. They inspire me to this day because they taught me that our Constitution and laws are meant for the people. And I mean all of the people, not just the powerful, just not the wealthy, just not the well-connected, but for all of the people, no matter who they are. And that passion, that mission has been what's driven me professionally, no matter what I've done, whether it was a school teacher, an economic developer, a lawyer in the Attorney General's office. I headed the Consumer Protection Division for a number of years, and then I was a state senator representing Raleigh and Cary, most of Wake County, for 8 years, and then these last 5 years as the Attorney General. And the reason I love being Attorney General is because I go to work with very talented professional folks who are completely committed to serving and protecting the people of this state.
So what is the Attorney General? I know, but a lot of folk that watch the Off the Cuffs podcast don't know. What is the Attorney General? What does he do?
The Attorney General is the state's lawyer. And what we do is protect people in a lot of different ways. We protect folks from crime, and we do that in a number of ways. We partner with you in local law enforcement. We have the state crime lab that analyzes crime scene evidence. We have the Justice Academy, which trains law enforcement officers, the Criminal Justice Training and Standards and Sheriff's Training and Standards who certify all your deputies. We also handle every criminal appeal in the state. The way it works when there's a prosecution, the local district attorneys handle that, although I have a unit of special prosecutors so that when there's a conflict or a local DA who doesn't have enough resources, they will refer cases to my office. And we'll then prosecute those cases. We've actually got a number of murder and drug cases in Catawba County going on right now. So we do a lot of work in the criminal justice system. And I also participate in a lot of important criminal justice debates, whether it's criminal justice reform issues, the opioid epidemic, testing untested sexual assault kits. So criminal justice. But we also protect consumers, seniors, consumers, from people out there trying to steal their money. We do a lot of consumer protection work. We do education. We go after companies that are ripping people off. We try to get people's money back. We have a whole consumer complaint handling process so that if somebody has frustrations where they've sent their money in to some company and they got back some product that wasn't right, or they bought their furniture and they can't ever get their furniture delivered, we can reach out to the company on behalf of the consumer to try to get them some relief. We protect our natural resources, the air that we breathe and water we drink, by going after polluters, making them pay to clean up the pollution that they make. And we protect folks' fundamental rights, like the right to vote and the right to live their lives free of discrimination. So the AG's office ends up impacting people's lives in a lot of different ways. It's just a lot of people, like you said, don't really know what the Attorney General does or even who the Attorney General is.
Well, you know what? I may need you in terms of getting some furniture delivered a lot sooner, right? But on a serious note, the AG's office handles so many things across the state. AG's office, you guys basically are the state's attorney.
That's right.
So a lot of cases that you see, do you guys initiate cases or do you take cases from the local?
It all depends. On the criminal side, we will initiate a case if it gets referred to the office.
Okay.
Okay. But, that's a small percentage of all of the trials and prosecutions that go on in the state. But on the civil side, we determine which cases we bring against corporations that are engaged in unfair, deceptive practices against people. So just some examples. I've led the national effort to hold the drug companies responsible for the opioid epidemic accountable. And I brought together a coalition of attorneys general, and these are Republican and Democrats working together to go after them. And so far, we've won more than $30 billion.
I saw that. I applaud you for that. I thank you for that because I'm a big proponent of the opioid epidemic, and I saw that you were spearheading.
And a lot of that money is going to come to Forsyth and to Winston.
Yeah.
And it'll go to the city council and the county commission, and they will use those funds over the next 18 years to help you attack the problem. So to the extent you have drug treatment in your jail or diversion programs that help people with addiction get out of the criminal justice system when appropriate and into the healthcare system, you'll be able to get funding to support your initiatives. So we do things like that. I was the first attorney general to sue Juul, the e-cigarette company, for hooking teenagers to nicotine. And North Carolina was the first state to hold them accountable. And we've secured dramatic changes to the way they do business. And we got $40 million to help kids conquer their addiction. I'm leading a coalition, every attorney general in the country, 51, including the district, to deal with robocalls. Everybody hates robocalls. When I go out there and talk to citizen groups, I get more questions about robocalls than anything else because it drives us crazy. But they don't exist to drive us crazy, Bobby. They exist to steal from vulnerable people. And they work to the tune of billions of dollars.
When you say a robocall, you're talking about, so let's say I got a robocall and I just want to call some people and say, hey, have a Merry Christmas. Is that considered a robocall?
Yeah, no. A robocall is when it's computer generated. And the vast majority of those computer generated are done by criminals saying, I've got some way to deal with your student loan debt. Or here's a credit card offer. Or I'm from the IRS and we've got a federal agent out there to arrest you. Call me to avoid getting arrested. Or you missed out on jury duty and there's a criminal summons. Call this number to deal with it. It's all about instilling fear or hope or something in us as people who get the calls so that we're less rational in the way we respond to it. When you're excited, you don't think as clearly. Wow. And they go after people, typically seniors, in order to try to steal their money. And there's a woman in Wake County lost over $1 million, her entire life savings to these criminals. And it's heartbreaking. And so I put together this coalition of AGs, and we're comprehensive in the way we're attacking it. We went to the phone companies and negotiated a series of anti-robocall principles where they would deploy technology to help screen out as many of these calls on the front end as possible, but also cooperate with us in our investigations against the wrongdoers. And I brought a number of actions against these robocallers. I'm also pushing the federal government, the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, to do more to deal with something called Stir Shaken, which deals with the spoofing of the numbers, where you pick up a phone call and it looks like it's your has the same prefix, area code and prefix, and you're like, is this somebody in my family? I'm not really sure. And you pick it up and it's a car warranty person. That's spoofing. And now it's illegal, but the FCC let the small companies have 2 years to get into compliance. All the big companies are already online, but I led a 51 AG coalition to say, now 1 year. I've also led efforts in the Supreme Court to defend the law that we use to go after the wrongdoers, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. So I'm working collaboratively with my fellow AGs from around the country to deal with these issues that really make the lives of consumers much worse.
So let me ask you this. So the AG is like the top cop in every state, right? In his or her state. He or she is the top cop. So, this has been a very difficult year with social unrest. Crime rate is up all over the country in every pretty much every state in the United States. What do you see that's happening that we could do better at in terms of law enforcement? What do you see some of the things that we need to look at how we do law enforcement, how we do policing? You know, everybody's talking about let's look at police, everything from defunding to let's talk about how we utilize policing in America now.
Well, I was honored that the governor asked me to co-chair the Task Force for Racial Equity and Criminal Justice, along with North Carolina Supreme Court Justice Anita Earls. And we developed 125 separate recommendations on how to make our criminal justice system work better for the people of North Carolina. And it's at every step of the process, because the criminal justice system starts when you recruit a law enforcement officer. And then it's how do you train that officer? What are the policies under which that officer operates? When the officer violates those policies, what kind of processes do you have in place to get them back in line? And if they violate it repeatedly or really bad, how do we get them out of the profession? Because not everybody is suited to walk around with a gun and a badge. There are some people
that's a fact
who should be in a different line of work. So helping the law enforcement folks do their jobs better, but it doesn't stop there. What happens after that person's arrested? What can we do to the process to make it fair? Are we detaining people pre-trial in your jails who shouldn't be there? They're there only because they're poor, not because they're a risk to the broader community. Because there are too many people out there who simply don't have $500 to pay bail, but all they did was some minor larceny, which is a crime and they should be held accountable for it. But that doesn't mean they should be locked up for weeks until their trial. Because every day you lock up somebody before their trial makes it more likely. This is counterintuitive. The longer a person is detained before their trial, the more likely they are to commit crimes in the future.
True.
It actually makes us less safe than keeping people locked up. You're like, oh, lock them up. That'll make us safer. No. When a person loses their job, they lose their home, they may lose custody of their kid.
Right.
Doors get closed to them and opportunities shrink so that when they get out of jail, they have fewer options. And when people don't have options, they make bad decisions.
That's a fact.
And so dealing with those processes of the courts, but also when people serve their time in prison and when they get out, we have to do a better job helping people reintegrate into the community again, because if people find door after door shut to them when they get out of prison, they're going to make bad choices and go back to whatever it was that led them to get arrested in the first place. And that's not in the broader community's interest. And so 125 recommendations we made at every stage of the criminal justice process, all about making it work better for the people of North Carolina. And what we're doing this year next is trying to get as many of those implemented as we can.
Wow. So you know what? I've known Josh Stein for several years now. And you're very impressive. Your career has been very impressive.
Thank you.
So what's next? I mean, what's next for Josh Stein? What's next for the Attorney General?
Well, I doing my job and serving the people of North Carolina.
So how long does the AG sit in?
It's 4-year term. So
4-year terms?
No, I'm sorry. It is a 4-year term.
That's
so I was elected first term, then I got reelected a second term last year. So I'm in my second 4-year term. I'm in my 5th year out of 8.
Okay.
And in 2024, what I am committed to doing is continuing to serve the people of this.
How long can you stay?
One can stay forever. Cooper was there for 4 terms. So he did 16 years.
16 years.
When he was AG. There is a term limit in North Carolina for governor for 2 terms consecutive. You can serve, leave, and come back. That's what Governor Hunt did.
Yeah.
And there's a 2-term limit for lieutenant governor. But otherwise, all these other offices, you can serve for as long as you want and the voters continue to elect you.
Elect you, yeah.
But, whether it's AG or some other office, what I am committed to doing is finding some way to serve people in this state and try to make North Carolina its best self, so that the promise of the state that we live in, that's incredible, Bobby, I want it to be more expansive for everyone and extend that opportunity to more people. Because if you work hard, there's so much potential in North Carolina, but we got to make sure that kids start school in a place where they're healthy and they're ready to read and ready to write. They have to have that grounding, and pre-kindergarten education can do that. Then when they're in school, we got to make sure they're learning how to think critically as well as learning to read and write and do math so that they can either go to a community college or start their career or go to university.
Right.
We just want whatever choice and dreams that people have for themselves and for their children, they can actually realize in this state. And I think there's a lot we can do to help them.
I've been here in this office for 3 years now. Be 3 years in December. And I've seen a lot of things happening. And one of the things is we were talking about crime. I think there are a lot of social issues in our society that we have yet to address as relates to equality, poverty, illiteracy, so many things that are happening in our society. From the AG perspective, what is it that you feel that from social issues that the AG's office can get involved in doing? So, for example, I think that some of the after-school programs that we got, we've got to find a way to change the narrative. I don't think that we can lock this problem away. We can't handcuff it away. It has to be some leadership in place that realizes that we've got to address the root of the problem as opposed to just keep grabbing at the fruit. And so I applaud you for some of the efforts that you've been on, some of the coalitions. But sitting here with you, what do you think we need to work at as a society? Because it seems to me that crime is increasing, right? Law enforcement is decreasing while crime is increasing. What do you think is missing? If you had that magic wand and you're the AG, you're the top cop in the state of North Carolina,
I think there's a lot we can do, Bobby. There isn't a switch that
Right.
we can flip to make things perfect for people.
Yeah.
That just doesn't happen. But we can set conditions for people to have greater success. So one thing about setting, if somebody is one sickness away from being bankrupt, or they don't have any means to pay for their health care issues, then that's not to lead to community stability. So, for instance, there were a number of attorneys general, Republican attorneys general, who sued to strike down the Affordable Care Act and all of the protections, not only to the uninsured. It was about 900,000 North Carolinians have gotten their health insurance through the ACA, either through the exchanges or subsidies, but seniors had much cheaper prescription drugs, and a lot of kids were getting on their parents' health insurance till they were age 26. There are all these consumer protections in there for folks. If you had a pre-existing condition, over 4 million North Carolinians do, you can be discriminated against by an insurance company, charged a higher premium, or denied access altogether at their whim, but for the Affordable Care Act. Well, so I went to court to defend the Affordable Care Act, and we won that in the United States Supreme Court. So right there, that's a positive thing because that creates at least a sense of stability for many people. Now, we still have hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians who don't have health insurance. And so I take every opportunity I can to argue that we should be expanding Medicaid in this state. The legislature should act to do that. And if we did, hundreds of thousands more people would have that sense of economic security that comes by being healthier and knowing that when you need a doctor, you can actually pay for the doctor. And by the way, it would help us with the drug epidemic that's devastating because people need treatment to deal with their addiction, and that costs money. So that's one way we can support people. There's the lawsuit that's going.
So speaking of the drug, I didn't mean to cut you off,
No
but
worries.
when you said that we've had 2 today, overdose. We've had 2 since this morning. What do you think the cause of the influx? I see the numbers with the opioid that every year is increasing by tens of thousands, right? We lost more last year than we lost Vietnam soldiers, right?
Yeah, more than 100,000.
Right. And I saw the numbers where we up like 100,000, right?
It was the deadliest drug epidemic in American history.
Without question.
And this year has far away been the deadliest. We like a 30% increase in 1 year.
I read that on the internet that by far it's the most deadliest. So what do you think is the cause of that?
What was really tragic is after years of hard work in 2019, we saw the first decline in opioid overdose deaths that we'd seen in years. it was through concerted efforts of many people to reduce the number of prescription opioids that were in circulation.
Right.
We passed a law that my office drafted called the STOP Act to limit the number of pills that could be prescribed. We had more treatment options available to people. So we were doing all of these things, and it was actually beginning to work. And then the pandemic hit. And this pandemic has created all manner of problems because if you think about what it's driven, isolation, job loss, insecurity, depression, anxiety, all of those measures are up. And what do those things do? Is they lead people, those are the same factors that lead to drug use. And so the number of people who are using drugs has increased. People's dependence on them has gotten greater. At the same time, this incredibly deadly drug of fentanyl is being put into the drug market in a way. People are taking drugs not knowing that it's laced with fentanyl, and that fentanyl is so powerful, it's killing people. And so all of that has led us to this very tragic point. And I think that the pandemic is also partly responsible for the uptick in gun violence we've seen, because there was essentially a lost year where a lot of the program you were talking about, the after school programs, the summer programs, the things that can constructively engage young people and get them in a positive path, we weren't able to offer all those things to the same degree we had in the past. So then you got these kids, they're at home, they're hanging out with their friends, and there are guns that are on the street. There are these things called ghost guns.
True.
They don't have a serial number. Anybody can buy them on the internet, and all it takes is a couple hours work, and it's a functioning handgun. So my office is trying to put a block to that ghost gun. We're also trying to ensure that the laws that limit gun purchases to 21 and older are protected. There was actually an effort here in North Carolina to eliminate your ability to conduct background checks on pistol permits, which is completely a step, in my view, backwards. We need to have more review of who's purchasing these guns so that law-abiding people buy them, but criminals and people engaged in domestic violence protective orders and mentally ill people, kids, they shouldn't be getting their hands on guns, which is in part what's driving all this gun violence.
Wow. That's interesting. When you hit it on the head with this opioid epidemic, things that are happening every day, not just in this county, but just all over the state.
It's heartbreaking.
What can your office do to slow it? I know in 19 we saw a decrease. I mean, what are you continuously? Do you think that by suing the manufacturers that's causing the slowdown, or
we're doing a couple of things. So we're changing the business practices of these companies. So the manufacturers have been advertising opioids to prescribers, saying opioids are incredibly effective at treating pain and they're not addictive. Turns out neither of those things are true. There are better ways to treat pain, and they are highly addictive. So we're holding them accountable for that. The drug distributors, the companies that take it from the manufacturers to the drugstores, they played a role because they failed to see the red flags that they should have seen, where these pills were pouring into communities where every single person in the community could have gotten 100 pills. And if they'd just done what they were legally obligated to do, which was to oversee the sales and make sure that there weren't problems, then we could have stopped it then. And then we've had a number of pharmacies that were part of the problem as well, not to mention some doctors who were prescribing these pills willy-nilly and by the way, making money for every prescription. So we've limited the number of pills that doctors can prescribe. We're tightening up the practices of the entire distribution chain. That's all well and good. But we have all of these people, tens of thousands of North Carolinians, who are addicted to opioids today. And if they're not using pills, they're going to go on the street and get heroin and fentanyl. So we've got to address the demand, which is the folks with addiction. And that requires treatment. That's why we need to expand Medicaid. But these settlements that we've secured, it's going to bring about $900 million to North Carolina just for opioids.
When that money coming?
Starts April 2nd. If enough local governments sign on, we'll know by January 2nd if they're enough. By the way, Winston and Forsyth have already indicated that they're on board.
Make a note of that. I'm looking for the check.
Yeah. April 2nd will be the first check. Then July 2nd will be the second check, and it'll be every July thereafter. And these are monies that are going to make a big difference to you, but also to treatment facilities in your communities, recovery groups, support networks. We know how to help people with addiction get that in their rearview mirror. We know what works to help people live a better life where they're not dependent on that chemical. But it takes work and it takes resources and money. And those settlements that we've won, I hope, will be transformative in helping thousands of North Carolinians live that life. All we want for every North Carolinian is for them to be able to choose for themselves, what am I going to do today?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of life do I want to lead? What can I do to provide for myself, but also give a better life to my family?
Yeah.
And people who have addiction, they can't do that because what drives them when they wake up is, where can I get this
Where
drug?
can I get this drug?
And then they make terrible decisions. They steal, they rob, they engage in all kinds of problems. So we got to break that cycle.
How's your family doing?
Everybody's great.
How your son?
He's great. He's a college junior. He's home for the
Where's he in
holidays.
school at now?
He's at Dartmouth College up in New
that's
Hampshire. Yeah, he actually knew you before I did, as you know.
He did.
He was at the School of the Arts over at Salem College, and you came in, and there was a sheriff debate, and that must have been in 2017, 28. I forget what year it was.
Yeah.
And he called me. He said, "I just saw Bobby Kimbrough. He's the real deal. You gotta see Bobby Kimbrough."
Yeah, he's an impressive young man, right?
Well, his endorsement's hard to earn. So when he was singing your praises, I'm like, I got to give this man a close look.
So it was some impressive students in that room, very impressive, right? And he's sharp man,
I agree with you. He's a sharp young man.
He is.
His older brother has graduated college, and he's living in New York, working as a paralegal with a law firm, having a great time. And their little sister is a high school senior at Broughton High School in Raleigh.
Okay.
And so she's starting to figure out what she wants to do with college, and we'll see how that turns out.
Well, I want you to know that I appreciate you. Glad to have you as my attorney general for the state of North Carolina. If you need anything from us here in Forsyth County, we just a phone call away.
And by the way, the phone works both ways.
Well, I know
so
that.
when you need the state, you give me a shout.
I appreciate that. We always let our guests have the last word. Anything you want to say, we give you the last word. Anything you want to say, you want to share, we leave it with you. Well,
appreciate you, Sheriff Kimbrough. I know the heart that you bring to this job, law enforcement, is an incredibly challenging profession. I think even more so today than ever before, because we put on you not only the obligation to keep the peace, but also to deal with so many other problems, people's drug addiction, people's family problems, like I have a kid and I can't handle my own kid, or other social problems, domestic issues, which frankly, there are other professions which I think are better suited for that. Social workers can handle a lot of that stuff. But because we've sort of failed on a lot of other fronts, whether it's healthcare or social services, everything ultimately lands in the lap of law enforcement. And what I think we need to do is free you all up so that you can focus on keeping us safe, because violent crime is real, and we've got to go after the perpetrators of crime to keep the rest of us safe and to deliver justice to victims. And that work is critically important. We know that you're struggling to get enough good deputies. And so one thing that I'm really pleased about that was in the budget this year, two things from a criminal justice perspective that are really positive. One is we got $9 million from the legislature to eliminate the backlog of untested sexual assault kits in the state once and for all. As you know, a couple years ago, we did a count, and there were some 16,000 untested kits sitting on the shelves of local law enforcement, and they weren't getting tested. And those victims, each kit came from a person who experienced terrible crime. And we owed it to those people to test those kits. And we're in the process of doing it. And I want to thank the General Assembly for passing a budget that included $9 million so we can get that job finished once and for all. The other thing they did is we had an initiative called the CJ Fellows, Criminal Justice Fellows Program. It's modeled on the North Carolina Teaching Fellows Program, which is, let's find some public-spirited high schoolers in this state who want to go into a job of law enforcement. Well, let's help them. Go get your 2-year degree at a community college. It'll give you a 4-year loan. It'll give you a loan for that. And over 4 years, if you work in public safety, once you're finished, that loan gets forgiven to zero. So it'll pay for an education of a future deputy. And what we want to do is get more public-spirited young people in this profession, because law enforcement is such a noble and important profession in our communities, and we want to get the best and the brightest to serve.
I appreciate it. We could talk all day, because you just hit another nerve. Talking with the warden over at DOC today, and he was talking about the numbers being low for correctional officers across the state of North Carolina. He and I were talking, and he was saying that for some reason, men and women across not only the state but across our country are shying away from many facets of law enforcement.
Because it's a tough job.
And it's a tough job, but I believe that with leadership like yourself and others around the country, around the state, we can bring it back, and we can sustain what needs to be sustained.
And I want to be there, right there beside you, man.
I believe you will. I want you to know that whatever is in your future, stop by, let us know. We appreciate you. You're doing an awesome job. Glad to have you here. Make sure you tell you something. I said I appreciate him.
He'll be tickled.
And as always, much support, much love to you. Have a great day. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Bobby.
Yeah, and I thank you. Thank you again for joining us off the cuff. As always, we love you. We love the support you give us. We love our county. We love our state. More important, we love our country. Have a great rest of your week.